In the early months of 1943, as the desert winter thinned into cold, hard light across Tunisia, Erwin Rommel formed his judgments of enemy commanders the same way he always had, by reading the battlefield itself. He did not rely on reputation or rumor. What mattered to him were patterns of movement, the tempo of attack, the manner in which units recovered after shock. When American forces first entered the North African campaign in force, Rommel found little to impress him. Their formations were slow to react, their armor scattered, their command hesitant. At Kasserine Pass in February, the U.S. II Corps broke under pressure, retreating in confusion through the mountain gaps. To Rommel, this was not the failure of brave men, but of leadership untested by war. He had seen this before in France in 1940, in the Balkans, and again in the desert. New armies revealed themselves quickly under fire. At that moment, the Americans seemed no different. Yet within days of Kasserine, something on Rommel's maps began to change. Reports from forward reconnaissance units described American positions stiffening, not in numbers, but in posture. Patrols were more aggressive. Artillery fire arrived faster and with clearer intent. Defensive lines were anchored, not improvised. Rommel had learned long ago to pay attention to such shifts. They rarely happened without a change at the top. German intelligence officers filtering captured documents and intercepted communications noted the same thing. A new commander had taken control of the U.S. II Corps, George S. Patton. Rommel did not know Patton personally, nor had they faced one another across a single stretch of ground. But Rommel understood command signatures. He had spent his career studying them, honing his own, recognizing others by the pressure they exerted on the enemy's will. Rommel's understanding of Patton formed not from words but from motion. The Americans under Patton did not retreat farther after Kasserine, they dug in. They reorganized swiftly. Units were repositioned with a clarity that suggested a commander who believed in momentum and discipline above comfort. Prisoner interrogations conducted by German officers along the Mareth line revealed a noticeable difference in American tone. The men spoke of strict enforcement, of inspections, of a general who appeared everywhere, who demanded order and speed. To Rommel, this was familiar. He had been that kind of commander himself, from the trenches of the First World War to the long supply lines of Libya. He knew the cost of such leadership and its power. Rommel's own situation at this moment was increasingly precarious. Supplies were scarce, fuel scarcer still. Allied air power dominated the skies, and the Axis position in Tunisia was compressed between British forces advancing from the east and Americans from the west. Rommel did not underestimate the British, he never had. Montgomery was methodical, relentless, predictable in his preparation. The Americans, however, were now becoming something else. In late February and early March, Rommel launched probing attacks against U.S. positions at places like El Guettar. The Americans held. Their artillery, massed and coordinated, inflicted heavy losses on German armor. This was no longer the force Rommel had shattered weeks earlier. He recognized that the enemy was learning fast, and that the learning bore the stamp of a commander who understood armored warfare not as a static contest, but as a test of nerve. Rommel was not a man given to exaggeration, especially in private. His diaries and letters from this period show a commander tired, increasingly ill, yet mentally sharp. When he assessed opponents, he did so with professional clarity. The Americans under Patton, he observed through action, were aggressive but controlled, disciplined without losing initiative. This combination caught his attention. German commanders had long believed that American forces would rely on overwhelming material and firepower rather than tactical finesse. Rommel began to suspect that under Patton, this assumption might prove dangerous. The Americans were still inexperienced, but they were no longer tentative. They were pressing forward when ordered, holding when required, and adapting quickly when plans broke down. Rommel's respect for Patton did not take the form of admiration, nor did it soften his view of the enemy. It was a recognition rooted in shared understanding. Rommel knew what it meant to drive men hard, to impose order in chaos, to demand speed in environments where hesitation meant death. Reports from German intelligence noted Patton's insistence on strict discipline, his intolerance for disorder, his belief in constant offensive pressure. These were qualities Rommel valued, because he had relied on them himself. To Rommel, Patton was not a showman or a caricature, but a commander imposing his will on an army that had not yet learned how to fight. That, in Rommel's experience, was the most dangerous stage of an enemy's development. When Rommel departed North Africa, he carried with him no illusions. He had faced many capable commanders in his career, and he categorized them carefully. Patton, in Rommel's estimation, belonged to a rare type, a commander who thrived on movement, who imposed clarity where confusion reigned, and who understood that morale was as decisive as armor or artillery. Rommel did not romanticize this opponent, nor did he fear him in any personal sense. But he respected what Patton represented, a modern, aggressive commander leading a rapidly maturing army. For Rommel, that recognition was not academic. It was the acknowledgement of a professional who had seen enough of war to know when a new adversary had arrived on the field, and when the balance of experience was beginning to shift.